Jackson Reed had everything a man could want. At 35, he was CEO of his own investment firm. He lived in a penthouse overlooking the harbor, and tonight he was celebrating 6 months with Natalie Porter, the elegant gallery owner, on his arm. He had no idea that in the next 10 minutes, his entire world was about to crack open. The Velvet Room was the most exclusive restaurant in Boston, the kind of place where everyone knew Jackson's name. He'd just placed a small velvet box on the table in front of Natalie. Not a ring, he told her, laughing. Just a key to his penthouse. He wanted her to move in. Natalie's eyes were still wide with surprise when a woman's voice spoke from behind him. "Good evening. Welcome to the Velvet Room. I'll be your server tonight." Jackson froze. He knew that voice. Soft, a little husky, with the faintest trace of a southern accent that 7 years in Boston had never quite erased. The voice that once whispered, "I do," to him, and later screamed that she never wanted to see him again. He turned around slowly, and his heart stopped. It was Madeline, his ex-wife. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, but that wasn't what made the blood drain from his face. It was the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath her apron. She was pregnant, and when Jackson did the math in his head, the date hit him like a fist to the chest. They had been divorced for 8 months. She was 5 months along. Natalie looked between them, completely lost. "Jackson, do you know our waitress?" Madeline answered before he could. "I'm his ex-wife," she said, and then, turning to Natalie with a tight little smile, "And you must be the girlfriend I read about in the gossip pages." Natalie corrected her. "Fiancée, actually, though no one had actually proposed yet." Madeline's composure flickered for just a second before she recited the specials and walked away like nothing had happened. But everything had happened, because the last time Jackson had seen Madeline was the day their divorce was finalized, the day they argued in the lawyer's office, and then, against every shred of common sense, ended up together in his car one final time. A goodbye that was supposed to close the door on them forever. Now there was a baby, and the timing was impossible to ignore. Natalie wasn't going to let it go either. All through dinner, she watched Jackson's eyes drift across the room, following his pregnant ex-wife as she moved between tables, refusing to look at him even once. "This is supposed to be our special night," Natalie finally snapped, "and you're staring at your ex-wife." Jackson apologized, but by the time dessert came, he couldn't sit still anymore. He told Natalie he needed 5 minutes, and he went looking for Madeline in the back of the restaurant. He found her pulling off her apron, and he didn't waste time. "Is it mine?" he asked. Madeline's hand went straight to her stomach, protective, defensive. "That's none of your business," she said. "If it's my child, it's absolutely my business," he shot back, and then, almost without meaning to, the old nickname slipped out. "What happened, Maddie?" She flinched like he'd struck her. "Life happened," she said bitterly, and she walked out the back door, leaving him standing there with a growing, sickening certainty that the baby was his. When he got back to the table, Natalie already had her coat on. She'd seen everything. "So were you planning to mention your ex-wife before or after I moved in with you?" she asked coldly. Jackson tried to explain, but there wasn't much to say. By the time he dropped her at her brownstone that night, she told him she needed time to think. He drove away. But instead of heading home, he found himself parked outside the old apartment where he and Madeline had started their life together, back when he had nothing but a business plan and a stack of maxed-out credit cards. Back when they were happy. He sat there a long time, wondering exactly where it had all gone wrong. The next morning, Jackson made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to his private investigator. The second was to his lawyer, asking one simple question. If the baby was his, what were his rights? 3 days later, the report landed on his desk, and it broke his heart in a way he wasn't prepared for. Madeline had finished a medical residency at Boston Children's 6 months earlier. She was supposed to be a pediatrician by now, the dream she'd been chasing since the day they met. Instead, she was waiting tables in Dorchester, living in a rundown studio apartment with bars on the windows. The report said she'd been involved with a senior doctor at the hospital, a married man, and that the scandal had quietly blacklisted her from every hospital in the city. There was no mention of who the baby's father was. Jackson closed the file and sat in silence, because he knew exactly whose fault this was. He was the one who'd worked 16-hour days. He was the one who'd missed her grandmother's funeral. He was the one who chose a company over the marriage every single time, until one day she simply stopped waiting for him to choose differently. That afternoon, Natalie showed up at his office. She'd done her own research, and she already knew the truth before she said it out loud. "You're still in love with her," she said. "I saw your face the second you heard her voice. I knew I'd lost you before you even turned around." She placed the velvet box back on his desk. "I won't be moving in." Before she left, she paused at the door and said something Jackson would never forget. "I think you should find out if that baby is yours. And if it is, do better by them than you did by her." That night, Jackson waited outside the restaurant until Madeline finished her shift. "We need to talk," he told her. "There's nothing to say," she replied, walking faster. But he kept pace beside her, and finally he asked her directly, "Was Dr. Taylor the father?" "Positive," she said, her voice steady as steel. But Jackson had already had his investigator check. Dr. Taylor had been at a medical conference in Switzerland during the exact week this baby would have been conceived. The lie was falling apart in real time, and they both knew it. Despite everything, when the wind cut through the street and Madeline shivered, Jackson convinced her to let him drive her home. Just a ride, no strings attached. But when his Bentley pulled up outside her building in Dorchester, his stomach dropped. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, bars on the windows, young men loitering on the corner under a flickering streetlight. This was where the mother of his possible child was living, alone, 5 months pregnant, working double shifts on her feet all day. He walked her up the creaking stairs to her door, and that's when he saw it, sitting on her desk, the only personal item in the whole Bay apartment. A framed ultrasound photo. "It's a girl," she told him quietly. Something shifted in Jackson's chest. A daughter. After he left, Madeline sat alone on her futon with her hand on her belly, and she finally admitted the truth to herself, if not to him yet. Dr. Taylor wasn't the father. Jackson was. But she had already decided. He had broken her heart once. She would not let him anywhere near their daughters. The next morning, packages started arriving at her door. An air purifier, a pregnancy pillow, bags of organic groceries and prenatal vitamins. A note in Jackson's handwriting, "For cleaner air and better rest." No strings attached. Jay! Then her phone rang, a stranger from one of the best maternity hospitals in the state, telling her she'd been switched with full premium coverage, paid for personally by a Mr. Jackson Reed. Then her manager called to say her hours were being cut to part-time, full pay, full benefits, because someone had called in concerned about a pregnant employee on her feet all day. Madeline didn't need to ask who. She had had enough. She marched straight into Reed Enterprises and was escorted up to his office to wait. And there, on his desk, she found something that stopped her cold. Not a photo of Natalie, but their wedding photo. The two of them laughing, feeding each other cake. He had never put it away, not even during the divorce. "You had no right to interfere with my job or my medical care," she told him the moment he walked in. "I'm worried about you," he said simply. "That doesn't give you the right to take control of my life," she snapped. "You lost that right when you chose this." She gestured at his office, his empire, over our marriage. "I know," he said quietly. And for a man who never admitted he was wrong about anything, those 2 words landed like an earthquake. He told her Natalie had ended things because she'd seen the truth before Jackson even let himself see it. He told her he had never stopped loving her. Madeline tried to walk away from it, tried to tell him not now, not after everything, but Jackson finally said the thing he'd been circling for weeks. "What if she's mine?" Madeline's resolve cracked. She was exhausted from carrying the lie alone, exhausted from pretending. "Yes," she whispered, tears falling. "She's yours." He asked her why she hadn't told him. "Because I didn't want her growing up feeling like an afterthought to your company," Madeline said, "the way I did for the last 2 years of our marriage." Jackson didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. "I deserve that," he said, "but let me do better. For both of you." She told him she didn't want his money thrown at her problems. She wanted to know this wasn't just about securing an heir. And so Jackson made her an offer. Move into his empty townhouse in Cambridge. Not with him, just a safe place, close to good hospitals. Take a break from waitressing. Let him be there for every appointment, every step. No more grand gestures without asking first. "Give me 6 months," he said. "If I haven't proven myself by then, I'll walk away and respect whatever you decide." She agreed on one condition. She would pay rent. She would not be his charity case. And for the first time in this entire story, Jackson Reed actually changed. He left the office by 6 every night. He turned down weekend conferences he once would have killed for. He sat through awkward birthing classes with the other expectant fathers. He went to therapy with her and admitted out loud, for the first time, that success had always felt safer to him than real intimacy, that he'd buried himself in work because he knew how to win there, and he didn't know how to be vulnerable anywhere else. Months passed. Madeline's interview at Mass General turned into a real job offer, waiting for her after the baby came. Trust, slowly, carefully, began rebuilding itself between them. Then, on a crisp autumn evening by the Charles River, the first contraction hit. 18 hours later, Charlotte Grace Reed came into the world, screaming at the top of her lungs while Jackson cut the cord with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "She's perfect," he whispered, crying without any shame at all. "She has your eyes," Madeline told him. "Poor kid," he laughed, but he never once looked away from his daughter's face. That night, in the quiet of the hospital room, Jackson pulled a chair beside Madeline's bed and took her hand. He pulled out a small velvet box, a different one this time. Not the key he'd once offered another woman. A ring. "This isn't about completing any picture of success," he told her. "These past few months have been the happiest of my life. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking for the chance to build something better. Will you marry me, Maddie? Again?" Madeline looked at the ring, then at her daughter sleeping just a few feet away, then at the man in front of her, the same ambitious man she'd fallen for in college, but humbled now, present now, finally choosing them over everything else. "On one condition," she said, smiling despite the tears. "No more 16-hour days. Charlotte and I need you here, not just providing." 8 hours, Jackson bargained. 9, tops, no weekends. "Then yes," she said, "I'll marry you again, Jackson Reed." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her gently, just as Charlotte stirred awake in her bassinet. Jackson scooped his daughter up before Madeline could even move. "Hey there, princess," he murmured against her tiny head. "Your mom just made me the happiest man in Boston. Again." And watching the two of them together, Madeline felt the loss of her guard finally come down. They had a long road ahead, rebuilding everything they'd lost the first time. But for the first time in years, she believed in it. Sometimes, she thought, the most unexpected reunions lead to the most beautiful beginnings of all.